When I went home that night, the real test began. And I was told that the intensity of this experience would magnify greatly, that I would be crowned the new Jesus. That did not seem like a very good solution. Then my soul told me that if I did not listen to it and did not follow it, then I would forever be closeted gay. And it said that if I decided to go home, that I would forever live with my parents and never find independence. So welcome back to Jesus.as.soul. This YouTube channel is dedicated to bringing you the secrets that are embedded or encoded within the Gospel of John. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. It really helps as we grow and expand this particular channel. And in the last video, we left off right in the middle of an experience that would eventually lead me to the lowest moment of my life. And in that video, if you missed it, you can find those links in the description box or right here. And this video picks up where the other one left off. I'm in the middle of that 6-day long, difficult experience in England. I hope you enjoy. And that night, I decided to spend the night with my friends who were in England. And as I was about to go to sleep, my friend, out of courtesy, took a clock that he had and stopped the ticking so I could sleep. But this terrified me because what I thought that meant, in that mental state, what I thought that meant is that time had stopped. I had, in fact, left this physical world and had instead died. That night, I slept more deeply than I've ever slept in my life. I can still remember how deeply I slept. It was the first night in 5 nights that I was able to get any rest. But when I woke up the next morning, I was still in that state. And in fact, it got even more intense. And that evening, my soul told me that I was about to endure another more serious test. And it gave me an out. My soul basically said that if it ever becomes too much, that all I needed to do was smoke a cigarette. Because I didn't smoke at the time. And if I smoked a cigarette, that would be something that was outside the realm of my normal actions. And after that, the test would stop. So that night, I was led into this parking garage that overlooked a field. And across the field, there was a billboard, a revolving billboard. And on the billboard, there were basically 3 different signs. The first one had a male figure who was about my age. Another one showed an older man who seemed to be the father, and then there was a mother. And through this revolving billboard, my soul showed me the reasons why I was depressed, the reasons why I had fell into such despair. And it had to do with the imbalance, my childhood imbalance between my mother, my father, and me. It's like my own deep secrets were being shown and revealed to me. When I went home that night, the real test began. And I was told that I needed to go to Bordeaux, France. And if I went to Bordeaux, France, there were 2 things that would be assured. That the intensity of this experience would magnify greatly. And if I made it to Christmas, because this was in December, that I would be crowned the new Jesus. That did not seem like a very good solution. I was already completely overwhelmed, and I knew that if I went to anywhere where it was going to be more intense, that I would not be able to handle it. Then my soul told me that if I did not listen to it and did not follow it, and if I stayed in England, then I would forever be closeted gay my entire life. And it said that if I decided to go home, that I would forever live with my parents and never find independence as an adult. These 2 other options of being closeted and being gay And going home and never finding independence represented, especially at the time, two of my greatest fears. You know, I was straight, but I had a growing confusion. I wasn't sure if I was straight. And I always had a deep fear that I would forever live in the home of my parents. So I was faced with a really serious dilemma. I knew that I could not go to Bordeaux, France, for that would ruin me. But I did not want to stay and face the first fear. I did not want to go home and become that second fear. I was stuck. And so I began to pace in the dorm room all night, trying to figure out which of those solutions I should take. None of them were a very good option. After hours of pacing, it finally dawned on me. The first of which is that no matter what, the light will never give me more than I can handle. I remember that thought from growing up in the church. And secondarily, I finally realized I was not stuck with just those three options, that there was a world out there, and I could choose to go any of those different places. I didn't have to go home. I didn't have to stay in England. I didn't have to go to Bordeaux. I could go wherever I wanted to. So that's what I decided. I decided that I wouldn't go to home. I wouldn't go to Bordeaux. I wouldn't stay in London. And in fact, I was just going to leave and go somewhere warm, somewhere sunny. I decided that I was going to book a trip to Portugal and escape the whole situation. So in a moment, I grabbed all of my stuff, put on my backpack, and decided to take a taxi to Gatwick, the airport in London, book a trip anywhere else. Now this was probably about 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And as I did this, I left my sister's dorm. One of her friends saw me, asked me, where am I going at this time of night? And I told her, I'm going to go to the airport. She contacted my sister. And at this point, all of the forces of creation prevented me from leaving and prevented me from making this decision. So somehow, I have no idea how, when I got to the taxi queue and got in a cab, somehow my sister called and she was trying to convince the guy to take me home. Of course, she was scared and worried and did not want me going to the airport. But in that state of mind, it felt as if the forces of creation were trying to prevent me from escaping. It was like out of a movie. I finally threw whatever money I had from him. I said, you got to take me to Gatwick. You have to take me to the airport. I have to get out of here. And finally, after a lot of back and forth, he agreed, dropped me off at Gatwick. So when I got to the airport, there was only one flight that was leaving, and that was to Liverpool. I did not care at that point where I was going. I just needed to leave. So I went to the electronic kiosk. I purchased the tickets. I memorized the confirmation code. I went to the ticket counter to board the flight or to check in. My record was nowhere to be seen. So I looked her very deep in the eyes and I pleaded with her. I said, I promise you I bought a ticket. I need to get on that flight. And somehow, miraculously, she agreed. She could probably see the pain I was in, the mental anguish I was in. She looked at me and she said, okay, I believe you. So what you're going to do is you're going to walk across the room, and it was a huge room. You're going to get to the gate, and you have a person at the gate, give him a call, and I will give you permission to fly. But when I got there, I stood in line, I talked to the gentleman, and I told him, please call the counter. But first, when he picked up the phone was dead. It was like all of a sudden went out. So because he could not get in touch with her, there was no possible way I could get on that flight. And I left defeated with no other options but to return and to face my fate. I arrived back in the heart of London. I realized that I was very mentally unbalanced, mentally ill, and I could see how this could easily lead to homelessness. But shortly after I had that thought, I remembered that all I needed to do to end this test was to smoke a cigarette. I asked someone for a cigarette, and I went back to my sister's dorm room. There, she and her boyfriend convinced me to go to a mental hospital. I talked to some of the doctors there. They evaluated me, and because I was not a threat to myself or to others, I was released. Went back to the dorm room where I was sleeping, closed the door, and when that door closed, I thought that I had entered into hell, that that door would never open again. The reality that I saw was that I had reached my eternal resting place and that I would forever be stuck in that dorm room. So of course, several minutes later, when someone opened the door, to my great surprise, I realized maybe I wasn't dead. I went to sleep. I again slept very deeply. And I was awoken by a telephone call. I answered the phone, and it was my brother from California. My brother said, "You got to get home. Mom and Dad have booked you a flight. The flight leaves in 3 hours. You don't have any time. Get your stuff, get to the airplane, and get home." I grabbed my stuff. I got to the airport. I got on the plane, flew back to California, was greeted by my parents. My parents took me directly to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist diagnosed me as being bipolar, and that concluded my experience in England. And what was left was someone who was completely devastated, whose foundation was completely cracked. And I spent the following 10 years beginning the process of recovery from that. And this story, the story of my recovery, the story of my elevation from this lowest point of my life, will be told in the next part of this story. In the next part of this series, we will look at the long and difficult process that I went through as I rose and elevated from this lowest point of my life, what my eventual healing process looked like, and how I came to find complete and total healing. Thank you very much for watching. If you could please hit the like, subscribe button, please hit the notification button. It really helps this particular channel. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much. I love you all.